Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel AWS DevOps Niche 11. So this is my part 2 video on the AWS Route 53 service. So in my part 1 video, I had talked about the various functionalities of the Route 53 service. What is a hosted zone? What is a record set? How do we create a hosted zone, record set, etc. So if at all you have not watched my part 1 video, you can click on the link above and you will be able to go through the content of the part 1 video. In this video, which is a continuation to the part 1, I'm going to talk about the health checks future within the Route 53. So the main agenda is going to be to discuss about the Route 53 health checks. So how can you do the health checks of the EC2 instances using the Route 53 service? And we will also have a lab demo on how to create a record set with a failover routing policy. So let's say you have a web server in a primary region, and during the disaster recovery scenario, you want to fail over the connections to the primary to the secondary. So how can you achieve that using the Route 53 health checks? So that is what we are going to see as part of this video. So let me just explain that scenario. So we are going to have a web server EC2 instance in the primary region, and we will have an EC2 instance running in the secondary region also. Let me call this as a primary web server. And let's say this instance will be running in the Oregon region. And let's have a backup web server which is going to run in the Mumbai region. Right? So this is a scenario I'm taking. And what we will do is we are going to create a health check in Route 53, and we will have Route 53 automatically fail over the connections to the backup web server whenever your primary web server goes down. So this is our lab scenario. So Route 53 is going to continuously do the health checks on the primary web server, and whenever it detects that the primary web server is down, it is automatically going to do the failover of the connections to the secondary web server. Okay, so let us see how to configure this. Okay, so we did see the functionalities of Route 53 in my last video, and basically we are going to see about the point 3. How do you check the health of your resources using the Route 53 health checks, and how do you do the failover automatically to the healthy web server in the secondary region? So let's get into the lab now. So these are all the steps that we are going to follow as part of the lab demo. So first and foremost, we will create a EC2 instance in the primary region, which will be acting as a primary web server. Then we will launch an EC2 instance in the secondary region, that will be the secondary web server. Then we are going to create a health check in Route 53. Then we will create a record set with a failover routing policy. Okay, so there are various routing policies that is available. For this scenario, we are going to use the failover routing policy, and then we are going to test the failover. Right? So let's go into the first step of creating the EC2 instance in the primary region. So let me go back to my AWS console. I'll go into the EC2 dashboard. And I will launch a EC2 instance in the primary region, which is Oregon. I click launch instances. I will call it as a primary web. Let me select the Linux to AMI. The instance type, I will leave it to t2.micro. Let me select the key pair. SSH, let me allow only from my IP address. And I'm going to allow the HTTP traffic because I'm going to install Apache HTTPD, which will be running on port 80, right? So let me go ahead and launch the instance. Similarly, we will launch an instance in our backup region, which is Mumbai. So let me switch to the Mumbai region here. This one, I'm going to name it as a backup web. So the same config 3. How do you check the health of your resources using the Route 53 health checks? And how do you do the failover automatically to the healthy web server in the secondary region? So let's get into the lab now. So these are all the steps that we are going to follow as part of the lab demo. So first and foremost, we will create a EC2 instance in the primary region, which will be acting as a primary web server. Then we will launch an EC2 instance in the secondary region. That will be the secondary web server. Then we are going to create a health check in Route 53. Then we will create a record set with a failover routing policy. Okay, so there are various routing policies that is available. For this scenario, we are going to use the failover routing policy, and then we are going to test the failover. Right? So let's go into the first step of creating the EC2 instance in the primary region. So let me go back to my AWS console. I'll go into the EC2 dashboard. And I will launch a EC2 instance in the primary region, which is Oregon. I click launch instances. I will call it as a primary web. Let me select the Linux to AMI. Instance type, I will leave it to t2.micro. Let me select the key pair. SSH, let me allow only from my IP address. And I'm going to allow the HTTP traffic because I'm going to install Apache HTTPD, which will be running on port 80. Right? So let me go ahead and launch the instance. Similarly, we will launch an instance in our backup region, which is Mumbai. So let me switch to the Mumbai region here. This one, I'm going to name it as a backup web. So the same configurations. Let me select a different key pair for Mumbai. HTTP traffic from the internet. Let me go ahead and launch the instance. Okay, so while this is launching the instance in the Mumbai region, let us go back to the instance in the Oregon. Let me quickly go ahead and set up Apache on this one. Okay, so this is my primary web. Let me log into this instance. So let me quickly install Apache HTTPD on this one. I will say yum install HTTPD -y. And now let me start the HTTPD service HTTPD start. Now I will go into the var www html directory and I will create a index.html file with the static content. So let me add a header tag here. Welcome to primary web, right? So this is the primary web server. Now let us try to hit this IP address in the browser and we will see if we are able to access the content. Okay, yeah, you can see. This is our primary instance. Now I will log into the instance in the Mumbai region. Okay, let me copy the IP address. Sorry, the key is different for Mumbai. Okay, so this is my instance in the Mumbai region. So again, I'll quickly install HTTPD on this as well. Install HTTPD -y. Service HTTPD start. Now I will create a static content here as well. index.html and I will add a header tag. Welcome to backup web. So this is our backup instance in the Mumbai region. Let us try to access this instance as well. Okay, great. So now we have set up our instance in the primary region. We have set up our instance in the backup region. So if I go to my slide, we are done with the first two steps. Launch EC2 instance in the primary region. Launch EC2 instance in the secondary region. And what is our next step? We have to create a health check in Route 53. So let me go ahead and create a health check. So I'll go to the Route 53 dashboard. And here you can see we have a health check option. So I click health check here. And then I will say create health check. Now I'll give it a name, maybe test health check. And so what is the health check that we need to do? So it is going to be the IP address because I want to ping the IP address at port 80 and then see whether I'm getting a response, right? So I'm going to give the IP address of my primary instance. This is the IP address of my primary web, right? So I want to just copy this and let me paste it here. And it is going to be hitting it on port 80. And what is the path? Path will be index.html, right? So this is what I have done here. So whenever I'm hitting this IP, it is basically checking the content on the index.html and giving us a response. So the path will be index.html. And let me click next. So if at all the health check fails, if you want to create an alarm, you can create an alarm. But for now, I will just go ahead and directly create the health check. Okay, so while this is creating the health check, let us go ahead and create a record set with a failover routing policy. So that is our next step. How to create a record set with a failover routing policy. So I will go back to my Route 53 dashboard and I click the hosted zone here. So in my last video, I had created a hosted zone, right? wherein I have mapped my domain name AWS DevOps info3.in to this hosted zone. So if I click that hosted zone, I have my two default record sets here, which is the name server record set and the start of authority record set. Now I'm going to create a record set for the primary instance. So what I will do is I will say create record. And here the record name will be www.awsdevopsinfo3.in, right? And this is a record set for the primary web server. So here what I'm going to do, I'm just going to select the A record, which is going to route the traffic to an IPv4 address and some AWS resources. And here I will be adding the IP address of the primary web server. Okay, and so here in the routing policy, I'm going to select failover as the routing policy. Okay, because we want Route 53 to automatically fail over the connections to the secondary web server whenever the primary goes down. So in that case, I'll have to select the routing policy as a failover routing policy. So let me select that. And then what is the failover record type? So this is for the primary, right? So this is going to do the health check on the primary, and when the primary is down, it's going to do the failover to the secondary, right? So, and what is my health check ID? So this is the health check that I have created, which is constantly checking the health of the primary web server. So I'm going to select the health check ID here, and then we can go ahead and create this record. Okay, so this is the record for your primary web server, wherein you select the routing policy as the failover. These will be the important configurations. You select failover as the routing policy, and you mention the record type as the primary. Then you select your health check, and then go ahead and create the record set. So record ID, probably I will say again, primary, and click create records. Okay, so now I will create one more record set for the secondary web server, right? So let me click create record. And here again, I'm going to put the same prefix, that is www.awsdevopsinfo3.in. And in this value, I'm going to add the IP address of the web server in the Mumbai region. And again, the routing policy, I'm going to select the failover. And what is a failover record set? In this case, it is a secondary, right? And there is no need for health check for the secondary record set, because we are doing the health check only on the primary, and whenever the primary fails, we are going to route the connections to the secondary web server in a different region, right? So there is no need for a health check ID for this. Record ID probably I will mention as, okay. So this is how you create the record sets using your failover routing policy. So now we have two record sets available here. One is for the primary web server, wherein we have selected the health check as well, and one is for the secondary web server. Now, whenever I give this DNS name in the browser, let us see whether it is hitting the primary web server. Okay, can you see here? It is hitting the primary web server. Now what I will do, I am going to shut down my primary EC2 instance, and we will see whether the connections are getting failed over to the secondary instance. And that is a scenario we are going to check, right? So now if I go back to my slide, we have done all this, right? We have launched an instance in the primary, we have launched an instance in the secondary, we have also created a health check in Route 53. It is taking the index.html for a success response. And we have also created two record sets with the failover routing policy, right? So one record set is for the primary. We created one record set for the primary web server. Then we created one more record set for the secondary web server. Now we need to test this failover, right? So for testing, what I'm going to do, I am going to shut down the instance in my primary region. So when I do the shutdown of the instance in the primary region, the health check will fail. And if the health check fails, our Route 53 record set has to route the connection to the secondary web server automatically. Right? So let us verify that scenario. So I'm going to terminate the primary instance. Let me go back to the Oregon region. Okay, so now this instance, let me terminate it. Or I will at least, stop the instance. In any case, the health check is going to fail. Okay, now the instance has been stopped. Okay, so as you can see, the primary web server has been stopped. And we can also see that now the health check is failed. You can see the status as unhealthy, where the health check to the primary is failing now. So now let us try to hit the same domain name, AWS DevOps info3.in. Initially, it was pointing to the primary web, but now, based on our failover record set, Route 53 should automatically point to the backup web server in Mumbai. Let's verify that. I'm going to refresh the screen here. Let me do one thing. I will copy this URL and paste it in a new browser session. Okay, can you see here now? Now the request is automatically getting routed to the backup web server. And this is happening because of the failover routing policy, what we created. Whenever the health check to the primary fails, Route 53 will automatically fail over the traffic to the backup web server in Mumbai. Right? So this is how you configure the failover routing policy in order to achieve high redundancy for your applications across the regions. So I also conduct training courses on AWS and DevOps. So if anyone would be interested, you can send an email to the mentioned email ID. So this training mode will be online via the Zoom, and class recordings will be uploaded on the Google Drive at the end of each and every class. So whether it is AWS or DevOps, the training is going to span for 5 to 6 weeks, and it is going to be an interactive course completely focused on hands-on lab exercises. So additionally, if anyone needs guidance on preparing their resume with the AWS and the DevOps profile, I can help you on that, as well as guiding you on the interview questions. So if anyone interested to take up the trainings from me, you can feel free to send an email to this email ID. So that's all I had on this video. So if you found this helpful, you can put in your comments and you can share this video with your known circles. So thank you all, and I will meet you all in my next video.